welcome. My name is Sean Miller. I'm the chairman and CEO of the Robert E. Miller Group, and we are your hosts. I'm also on the panel here too, so keep the questions easy and for all of us. But I'm really excited about this topic. I'm really excited about the work that Laura does, because our business it's a family business that my dad started in 1961. My brother and I own about 85% of the company. We have 6 other shareholders. But we have made the conscious decision to perpetuate our business within our family. And we run an insurance and benefits brokerage, so we're actually pretty marketable. And in a time where I see a lot of my buddies selling their businesses, there's a whole lot of that going on, we have consciously decided to keep the business in our family so that we can perpetuate the values that we learned from our dad and that he taught to us and to our kids, and hopefully we can continue that for generations, because I think a business is a really powerful tool, organization for good in a community. The purpose of our business is to serve others for the greater glory of God. My dad was we're big rockers people, so that's a real Jesuit thing, AMDG, if you ever see that. It's ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, for the greater glory of God. So that's what our business is for, and our number one value is God, family, and community come first. So we'll talk a lot about how that comes out in our day-to-day work, but one of the main things, and one of the ways that we feel we have a competitive advantage, if you will, as a business, is that we're industry experts. And we are industry experts in working with not-for-profit organizations. So we've actually taken our business and we get involved in the community by helping them with their risk management, their insurance, their benefits, a lot of the things that they spend a lot of money on, because I've always told the nonprofits I work with, if I can save you thousands of dollars, that's better than helping you raise money, because those savings are year after year after year. So in addition to the giving piece, which you'll hear more about, we try and work with them on that standpoint and protecting them too. So this really isn't about selling insurance, but that's kind of one of the ways that we actually use our business and our partnership with the community to really, really get engaged. We've got a practice here that just works with not-for-profits. I think it's the only one like it in Kansas City. So anyhow, thank you again for coming. I'm really excited, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Laura. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you to Sean and to the Miller Group for hosting. So I'll offer just a little bit of background on how all of this came about, because I think the story of the social impact benchmark is interesting. I guess I think it's interesting. But so how did all this come about? About a year or so ago, a handful of us were working on projects together, and there were about 10 companies that said, we are beginning to see a bigger and bigger question within the work we do around how does doing good, community impact, community relations, whatever you want to call it, but how does doing good, social impact, relate to achieving business results? Huge question mark. Everyone had a really intuitive sense that doing good for the community, all of the things that Sean just talked about, having employee volunteer programs, doing things in the community, having some community relations program, whatever. Everyone had an intuitive sense that that's good for business, but no real way to connect it to employee performance, business results, all of those things that hit the bottom line. So this group of companies, a lot of you here, said let's form a membership group, just a community initiative called the Social Impact Benchmark, to collaborate and learn from each other, and learn from research that's been done in the field, learn from best practices that each and every one of us have seen or are doing ourselves, and share it from time to time. Share it virtually, a lot goes on online, but share it from time to time in forums like this, hosted by members, so that we can learn from each other and get better at celebrating the human side of business to get the results that we all want for our companies and for our people. So that's why we are here. I have spent my career in this area, and philanthropy, the intersection of philanthropy and business. My day job is CEO of Crown Philanthropic Solutions, which is a technology firm that was founded here in Kansas City 10 years ago. So the work I've done over the years has tied into this, but this has been a really rewarding community opportunity for all of us, I think. I think we've all enjoyed being involved as members collaboratively with this, volunteering our time for the Social Impact Benchmark. So thank you all for your time and your support of the operations of the benchmark to keep it going. Okay, so today we thought we would do something fun with a game show format, so we'll see how we do with this. I meant to bring those easy buttons that I did not. So you guys can pretend you have an easy button. Slap the table when you're ready. So we're going to set this up. So the format for today is going to be this. We will do a little game show to try to have some fun with getting out some of the ideas and messages, and then we'll walk through what are some of those best practices and trends that all of you and that leading companies in the country are beginning to see, connecting that human side of business, that social impact side of business to the results that companies want to see. What are those benchmarks? What are those social impact benchmarks that begin to drive business performance through doing good? We also have, if you want to pass business cards down, or we have giving away a cake. We'll do a drawing for a cake. It's chocolate in the theme of celebration, so who does not want to take a cake with them? So pass a business card down that way if you want to be in the drawing. Otherwise, we'll just pick somebody, I guess. Okay. Many thanks to the Miller Group. Special thank you to Balance Innovations. Shelley Bossler is here. Jennifer Wolf is here at the camera. And Scott Young is here. So we have three folks from Balance Innovations. Balance Innovations is a member of the Social Impact Benchmark. And Balance Innovations, as a Social Impact Benchmark member, is volunteering to do videos for us, which is great. So this content will be online, which is very helpful because this initiative, if you haven't checked the website lately, you should, because you'll see that more and more national, large publicly traded companies are joining the benchmark from out of town because they are seeing the work that you all are doing as truly best practices. And that's not too surprising. Kansas City has always had a very rich history of philanthropy, a very rich history of philanthropy driving entrepreneurship and vice versa. Many of the large companies here, you all know, have been built by people like the Millers, like Kauffman Foundation, Ewing Kauffman, who then put his legacy into the Kauffman Foundation. So there's a really strong legacy in Kansas City of business and philanthropy tying together. So I think it's not surprising that a city like this would be doing something like the Social Impact Benchmark, and it's getting national attention. So we'll have this video footage available for the national members. This is called the You're So Good Social Impact Culture Game Show. And the name is not an accident. You're So Good. One of the key themes that has come out of the research is recognizing that the most powerful way to construct a social impact program and to use it in the best possible way to drive employee performance is to first and foremost celebrate the good that people are already doing. And that has been a common theme throughout all the research studies that we've looked at, that we've been involved with, that all of you have been involved with. You know, based on the data, that when a company can celebrate its employees, train its employees about the value of social impact and the value that they as human beings bring to the world, those employees, those team members are better performers, and it goes straight to the bottom line. It's all good. It can benefit both the company, all three, the company, the community, and the employees all at once. So that's why it's called You're So Good, because we always start from the proposition that people are doing good. Okay, introducing our wonderful contestants. You've heard from Sean Miller. Jackie Kindred, would you like to introduce yourself? Or Scott, I'm going in order this way, but not in order. So don't follow that, follow this. Introduce yourself, contestant Jackie Kindred.
Hi, my name's Jackie Kindred. I'm from Lenexa, Kansas. I don't know, taking walks.
Fabulous. And guess what, Jackie? You're so good.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Madsen. I'm here locally in Kansas. I live in Shawnee, Kansas. I'm an owner of a place by the name of Talia House. Talia House is a 7-bed transitional living home for women who suffer from eating disorders. We are a step-down care. I bought Talia House about 4 years ago, And I think it was about a month after I bought it, I called Laura and talked to her a little bit about what we were doing. And I'm in the finance industry, and I always tell people, don't buy anything that you don't know anything about. And I did that. But what has come of that, some of you may or may not know what we do down at Talia House, but I've really come inspired by these young ladies who suffer from this disease and have wanted to draw attention to it because there's not much insurance coverage for it, and the families are decimated financially by it. I've spent a lot of time down there talking with them to learn, about the disease, and I know quite a bit right now, but that's another thing has spawned from that is my foundation that I started to help with the financial cost of treatment, whether it be for higher levels of treatment or my treatment. So I thank you all for coming. I thank Laura for putting this on and Sean's group for hosting.
And Scott, you're so good.
Thank you.
You've already won. You didn't even know it. Okay. So first question for our contestant. Based on the research, could someone please name 3 of the 10 ways to do good? Sean, please name
3, giving. Now, do you want me to talk a little bit about
You
some
can answer
things,
this
or-
question any way you want. I can even pop up the answer slide if you would like.
Oh, that helps.
Whoops, it's
That
a little
helps.
bit off. It's
Okay.
okay. Well, it's
Well,
How
I
that
would,
happened.
and maybe, can I give examples of
Sure,
stuff that
you can
we
say
do?
anything you
Okay,
want.
so giving, and I wanted to talk about giving, volunteering, and sharing. So giving, we believe as a family, as an organization, tithing, so giving 1/10. So we give it at least 1/10 of all of our income to charity every year. So that, if you do that over a long period of time, from a business standpoint, it gets kind of interesting because you really have to start to budget. I'm sure everybody in this room gets calls all the time from organizations. So we establish budgets at the beginning of the year, and so obviously we've, in our business, we've attended a lot of golf tournaments, a lot of events and that, and so we've actually tried to be a little bit more intentional about how we give and the impact that our giving has rather than just giving money to a group to do a gala or something like that. We still attend those, but I've spent some time with some of the larger groups that we work with, talking with their leadership about, you could call it capacity building or whatever, but the thing I really like to see them use it for is leadership development. So we'll make a grant to them, and then some of them have they've got pretty large nonprofit organizations, and they'll actually do grant requests inside of there. So last year, for example, one of the organizations we work with, they've got close to 1,000 employees, and they were able to send kind of the second tier of leadership to a national conference, something they never would have been able to do before, but it was a real game changer for those people. A lot of you guys probably go to those things all the time, but sometimes the management level doesn't get to attend those. It's a very, very big deal for them. We also actually facilitate a CEO roundtable for nonprofit leaders here every month. So it's a different group all the time, but again, trying to build that leadership. And we made a grant to one of our nonprofits, and one of their CEO is actually attending. It's a little bit like Vistage. Is anybody familiar with Vistage? So it's kind of a business development. But not-for-profits almost never can afford to do stuff like that. So we made a grant for the CEO to do that, and it's about a $50 million not-for-profit organization. So I always use the analogy of the Kansas City Royals, because I think it's one that I just absolutely love the Kansas City Royals and have my whole life, and I grew up with the good Royals, and then I went through the 30 years of bad Royals, and I got to tell you, Dayton Moore, and I recommend reading his book. The transition that's taken place in that team over the last 5 years is nothing short of miraculous, and it's leadership. So I'm a big believer in the power of leadership and the leverage that it can create. So that's why I'm so big on if I can. And some of them just say, no, we want you to support our gala. Okay, that's fine. But for the ones that want to take a little extra time and really use it strategically, that's one of the things that we try to do. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but that's kind of the tithing thing. We have a couple of other things that we do inside of here. We always felt that it would be a shame if we're doing all this nice stuff in the community and if some members of our own Miller family here had some kind of a personal hardship and we weren't helping them out. So we created a benevolence fund inside of our company, and there's some ways that you can do that. So what we've done is for every dollar that our associates contribute, we match that. And so we've built up a lot of money, and we have a benevolence committee that doesn't have a single Miller in it. I guess my dad was in it when he was still alive, but he passed away 5 years ago. But so we've got, Mindy, help me out, we have 3 or 4 people on the benevolence committee, and so they can submit grant requests if there's an emergency within their family or their immediate family. And so we've made a lot of grants to help out our people and
And what way to do good does that fall under? That would be sharing, actually.
Is it sharing? Okay.
And
Yeah.
and classic, that's a really great example of sharing. A lot of companies ask that question, okay, we want to do something for our colleagues,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really fit into giving to a 501c3 tax deductible thing. It's not really volunteering, but it's good. It's a really good thing to do. So sharing emerged in the research as a very powerful tool for inspiring a workplace culture and performance. And that's a fabulous example. You call it the benevolent. You actually have
It's
a
our
formal
benevolence
structure.
fund,
That is
and
great. I did not
it's
know you did that.
completely
That's great.
anonymous. I
That
have
is
to tell you,
wonderful.
we've had it for
That's good.
about maybe 10 years, and I honestly don't know who's received, who has been
That is-
recipients of
That is
the
a
gifts.
great example
So, yeah.
of sharing. That's terrific best practice.
Yeah, so that's a really
good.
good one. And our people also we don't do United Way, we do the Miller Way. So
Cool. There you
Miller
go.
Way, again, we match dollar for dollar. For any money that our people put in, we match dollar for dollar for them. And then they can designate the funds, and then they can go ahead and actually get to deliver a check to the organization themselves. for
Wow.
that. So that always, we make those gifts around Christmas time. Can I keep talking, or?
Yeah, give
me-
one more example and then we'll move on. But then we'll
Okay,
have
well,
more
those
discussion,
are
'cause
kind
these
of
are-
on
these
the
are really
giving,
good
sharing
examples.
time, because the other thing that, and I guess a lot of groups do this, but, since we work with a lot of nonprofits, we do a day of service in the spring and in the fall, and so half our workforce will go out in the morning, and then half will go out in the afternoon, and we'll have a big lunch in the middle of the day, and we'll do some work. Like, a lot of times it's Christmas and October type stuff where you're painting and fixing things up, but one year we had, one of our agencies does all the foster care in this part of the state of Missouri, so they had an adoption fair for these foster kids. And so our people went out on a Saturday, and it was pretty much manned by Miller Associates, and they had a little
Wow.
carnival. And so what they did is they had the kid. It was a little awkward, in the words of my children. You had all these kids in foster care that were hopeful of being adopted, and you had parents that wanted to adopt maybe, and so they came out there, and it was tried to be kind of natural, and it was, because they had a lot of carnival games and stuff like that. One of the kind of sad things, but maybe a really good learning experience for my youngest child, who was at the time like 16 or 17-year-old, and she had a couple of her friends from St. Teresa's there, because they spent the day and they kind of hung out with this 16-year-old boy who was in foster care, and this kid had lived in like 5 places in the last year or two, and just you look at this kid was like us, just a normal kid, but those girls spending that day with him was really impactful.
Wow.
For her, and I was really proud of our people spending the day, helping those kids out. So.
Wow. Those are great examples. And so takeaways there, those are very concrete examples of how a social impact program in the workplace is building that human side of business to inspire business results directly. Because your associates walked away thinking, my employer is celebrating the opportunity to do this, cares about me and others as human beings, is incorporating doing good and social impact into the workplace and actually formalizing programs that allow me to do that. So very strong examples.
And I guess it just dawned on me that people spend lots of money on team building things.
Exactly. Bingo.
And that's
you get a bonus point.
That's about as good a team
You get
building as
cake.
you can do. Ooh.
Shit.
So-
No, we can't go back on it. Okay, so think about that dilemma that people in business face. They know, as leaders in your companies, you have to do team building. You have to do it. And you also want to do these doing good things. The best kind of team building is doing good. And the research shows it, so it's not just, guessing. People say across the board, we we no longer go out and do paintball or do fake strategic planning sessions where we all put sticky notes up on the wall. No more, because it's disingenuous, doesn't work, it doesn't do anything to inspire the values of the company. But when you can connect that human side of business, human side of life to the business world through the volunteering and the doing good programs, you get that magic of team building and culture building wrapped into one. So great example. Perfect. Okay. Name 3 types of benchmarks for social impact programs. Scott Madsen, you're up. And would you like the answer on the screen? Let's see what we didn't even get weird graphics.
Well, there's
Awesome.
the social impact cultural benchmark. There's the sustainability benchmark, and then also the community impact benchmark.
Excellent. Okay. Would you like to walk through those, or would you like me to walk through those?
You could walk in. I'll add in what you
And you
like.
can chime in.
That's
And
I'll
you can
chime in.
say ditto, or if you don't
Yeah.
understand something, you can say it's a dilemma. Could you explain? Okay. So let's take the sustainability benchmark and the community impact benchmark first. I hope you hope you can see these. So the sustainability benchmark, that's about going green. That's been enormously popular for a very long time. And that originated with a lot of the environmental concerns, and it is really an important component of overall social impact. So back to, we'll just kind of click back here, not physically, but think back to those 10 ways to do good. One of the 10 ways to do good that emerged from the research is recycling and respecting a sustainable environment. So that is a critical component of this overall doing good footprint, but it's one component. So over the last 10 years or so, this whole idea of sustainability has become very important, but it's been recognized as just one piece of an overall social impact footprint. So sustainability benchmark, those are very regulation focused. So a lot of engineering firms are very interested in that, which is really important, the LEED certified stuff, just even basic things from all the way to LEED certified, all the way to do you recycle in the workplace. That's recycling, respecting a sustainable environment, going green, those kinds of things. That is a regulatory approach. There are lots of national regulatory groups, Global Reporting Initiative and others that have tools for businesses to track how good they are in that regard. Their carbon footprint, a lot of supply chain responsibility types of things. Those things are good. Those are really good. That's one benchmark that some companies use. You see it in a lot of publicly traded companies. So the GRI reporting is becoming more mainstream. Here's the challenge. Companies that focus on human capital often find that less relevant, right? Because they're not manufacturing. You don't have a carbon footprint. Like we're recycling our stuff, but we can't really. We don't have supply chain diversity issues because we don't have a supply chain. We're not manufacturing thing. We have human capital. So the Global Reporting Initiative work is great. It's challenging for human capital companies. What are the growth industries? Human capital-based industries. Tech, it's talent. It's people who understand technology, people who know how to build things, less and less manufacturing. So sustainability is very important, but it's becoming much more part of an overall benchmark. Community impact benchmark, also very popular. There's a really large organization called the Committee Encouraging Corporate Philanthropy that pulls a lot of data on this. The top quartile of companies that are surveyed in this give 1.74% of their profit to charitable organizations, and that's an interesting statistic. However, this benchmark is focused almost entirely on dollars and hours contributed to charities, and it has an increasing focus on measuring the impact of those dollars with the nonprofits themselves. But it's become the focus of consumer products companies for the most part. So if you look at the sustainable brands or even the Committee Encouraging Corporate Philanthropy, a lot of those companies are very large multinational consumer products companies that are boosting brand through alliances with nonprofit organizations, which is good. It's just becoming a little bit more difficult to apply that type of a benchmark to the businesses of today, which are so reliant on empowering human capital. So what is the emerging benchmark? The emerging benchmark is the social impact culture benchmark, which of course takes into consideration sustainability and community impact. but it's bigger than that. It's people-focused. It's a very efficient benchmark for using resources. It aligns talent and productivity and job satisfaction. And it is aligned with this emerging trend that's come through the social impact benchmark research that we found consistent with celebrating the human side of business. So when you look at things like engagement, these are the types of stats that flow into a benchmark like that. Workplace engagement, 31 for Gallup does all the engagement, workplace engagement surveys, really great stuff, research. 31.5% average engagement in 2014. So that's do the math. What percentage of workers are disengaged? 68.5, right? So that's a lot of disengaged people. So a social impact program can actually boost engagement if it matches something called a social impact culture type. We can get into that maybe a little bit later. Okay, so Scott, how did I do?
Excellent.
Social impact. So these are the benchmarks. So now we have name 3 other names for a social impact program.
Ding.
Jackie Kindred, you're so good. What's the answer?
Corporate social responsibility, doing good, community relations.
Excellent. Okay. One of the biggest challenges in this whole area is, what is this thing even called? It is called so many things, and every company calls it something different. So one of the first questions all of our researchers asked when this study was going on was before they would log in information about a company, is they would say, what do you call it? Because if the researcher went in and said, tell us about your corporate social responsibility program, like, yeah, we don't have one. But they do. They just they drew out the information. What do you do volunteering? Are you matching gifts? What kind of stuff are you doing in the community? What do you call that? Oh, we call that community relations, or we call that corporate citizenship, or we call that civic engagement, or we call that corporate giving, or whatever. So it was really important, but much more important than our researchers suspected. Much more important to level set on what we call these things. Okay. Why should we stop here? There's so much more fun to go, and we have another 28 minutes, and we can stop a little bit before that so we can take questions. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to go through some of the emerging research so that this group, part of the reason I think all of us have signed up for the benchmark is to get the latest and greatest stats on how the human side of business, how a social impact program within your company is delivering business results to your bottom line. So let's go through some of those. Okay, this is all about, what is this all about? This is all about understanding trends and best practices. Everyone that has been involved in the benchmark social impact benchmark conversations has said, I want to know what the trends are, I want to know best practices. Number 2, everyone wants to know how to measure up. How am I doing? I know I'm good, but I know we're doing good. But how do we relate to everybody else? What should we be doing? Are there gaps we have? And then how do we take action to close those gaps? Everybody wants to know that. Who cares about this? 3 main groups of people care about this. Investors care about this in publicly traded companies or privately held companies. People who own companies care about this. Employees care about this. Consumers care about this. How much do they care? Investors. So there is a very large trend toward impact investing. And Vern, you could give this talk much better than I could. But in 2010, in fact, impact investing was a $50 billion industry. It is projected to be a $500 billion industry in 5 years. Vern, could you give a definition of what impact investing is, since you are the guy?
No, I can't do that. I absolutely can't do it. Because as you pointed out, every time you ask the question, you get a different answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I work for a financial services company, and we've been on a journey, and we enjoy this niche of our industry that we define as impact investing. And to do that, we search out other companies like the ones in this room that are on a journey to do good in some capacity inside of their firm. And that's how we define it, is pairing our clients' capital with other companies who are engaging their communities and focused on recycling and giving and something inside of that business that we can lift up and celebrate on behalf of our own clients. And that is one of the broader definitions that you'll find. A lot of other financial firms in my industry go more niche, and they'll focus on just the social responsibility component, or just the cultural component, or just the religious component. We open the door and take a broader view, but the definition of it is open to everybody's individual conscience at this point.
As it should be. So this trend around, again, it goes back to that basic principle of, are you celebrating the human side of business to get the results that you want? And this industry as a whole is experiencing 10x growth. So that gets the attention of obviously a lot of publicly traded companies. A lot of REITs are very interested in this. Large institutional investment firms are very interested in this trend. All right, employees care. So when the research on this began in about 2006, the percentage of the incoming workforce that really wanted to work for a company doing good was 56%. In a period of when that study was repeated 6 years later, 86%. That's a 30% increase. That's more than that. I should do not. It increased by 30%, up to 30% higher. Statistic there. Look at that. That's incredible. So this is a huge area of growth. Now, what does that really mean, though? Because it's one thing to say, all these people going to work want to work for a good company. What does that mean for the business? 87% reduction in turnover at companies with a strong culture of engagement. That's real dollars. So a lot of companies are doing the math and saying, okay, if we invest in a social impact program and it prevents 2 employees from leaving or allows us to retain top talent, whoa, I mean, that's ROI. That hits the bottom line in a very positive way. This is a really powerful perspective that came out of the research. This is a very common theme. This was a quote from a software engineer, 28-year-old software engineer, who said, I want to work for a company whose leaders understand that lives are improved by tapping the power of doing good for others and making me better at my job all at the same time. By the way, this material is all on the Social Impact Benchmark website. You are, as members of the Social Impact Benchmark website, you are encouraged to cut and paste and take and copy that information to use for your purposes any way you want. No need to reinvent the wheel. You're part of this initiative for that reason. So anytime, go onto that website, click, cut, paste, all these things are there. Yes. Yes.
So can you tell a little, how many people were interviewed or surveyed?
This was a study that was done over a period of 3 years, total of about 1,200 people in the individuals surveyed, consumers, and then about 150 to 200, well, about 150 CEOs and another 50 executives.
Across the country or?
Across the country. No, across the country. Okay, consumers care. 91% of consumers want to purchase products and services from companies that are doing good. And so on some of this, Mindy, to clarify, some of it is organic research, is primary research, and others is just studies. There's been a lot of curation of studies that are already out there. So, this was taking level setting with what are all the best studies out there, and then how do we even go deeper. So these are studies that are already out there. Jim Stengel, who is the former global marketing officer at Procter & Gamble, conducted a 10-year study of 50,000 brands and determined that the highest brands that are built on ideals actually outperformed the S&P 500 by 4 times. So that's powerful. Here's the perspective there is the typical socially conscious consumer is saying, I pay attention to a company's story to figure out whether the company is for real. Does the company truly care about its people, its customers, and the community it serves? I want to know before I buy. That's their perspective. This is a messed up slide again. So here's this interesting people trend that we've covered in the panel. Work and home lives are merging. Is that any surprise to anyone? No. And it's all thanks to this, right? Great. This is fabulous. What does it mean for the workplace? It means the workplace and home life, people's lives are merging. So the concept of a well-rounded life is critically important for employers today. Because if employers are not recognizing that their team members, their valuable talent, wants to experience a well-rounded life at work and at home, they're not going to be as successful as those companies that do. So social impact activities at home and at work, a strong component of today's definition of a well-rounded life. The research has yielded these 10 ways to do good. So the way that these studies were conducted was to figure out those common activities that defined a well-rounded life that included social impact that occurred both at home and in the workplace. Because if an employer can celebrate all of that, celebrate people as human beings, one by one, that human side of business, they can empower those individuals, inspire that talent, and connect it to business results. Everybody tracking? Unfortunately, most executives do not know that they really aren't tapping these tools. So most people who are at management levels in companies are saying, ugh, I kind of know I need to be doing all this, but I know I'm not taking full advantage of these tools. So they know they do not have a benchmark to measure the success of their activities. They're not measuring how effective is our community engagement or social impact or social responsibility, whatever they call it, how effective is that program. They do not have a compelling message platform to describe what this thing even is. Yeah, we do some stuff, but they don't have a concise, compelling executive messaging platform to incorporate it in their brand. And there's very little structure. So it's not like what Sean has where they've got, a committee and all these things. Most companies don't even have just a basic charter. This isn't about over-governance. This is about basic principles of process and just in capturing what does that program look like. Who's in charge of it? What are the parameters of it? Does it include matching gifts? Who owns it? Just like a 3-page charter. Here's the vision for the program. Here are the success measures. Here are the positions in charge. All based on best practices. So there are a lot of gaps out there. We talked about social impact culture being the emerging benchmark. This is just showing you to celebrate the success of the initiative that all of you are involved with. 47 companies are now involved in the social impact benchmark. This is a very common quote. Our investors are asking us how we are retaining our talent. They are also asking whether we are a good company. At the same time, they don't necessarily want us to spend more money on charitable donations. So, it's a very candid comment. So we're building our social impact culture to check the good box and also deliver ROI. Really important to blend those things together. So tips on what you can do, and then we can open it up for questions. We'll have 15 minutes for questions. What actually can you do? So what best practices, what members of the Social Impact Benchmark are doing is they are adopting a social impact culture benchmark. So actually identifying their social impact culture type, what do their employees like to do, what are the things that define that social impact culture, and they're incorporating their whole community engagement or their social impact program or their community relations, whatever they call it, into their human resources and talent culture strategy. And they are setting concrete metrics for the return on their activities. So how are we measuring success? We know we have this program, but how do we know it's working to achieve our corporate goals? They are also building a compelling messaging platform. They're developing really concise, compelling language to describe the program across their internal and their external communications assets to reinforce that social impact culture is part of their brand. And this has been really useful for executives to have a strong yes to be able to say a strong no, to give a strong no. So for example, when an executive, one of the big pain points in the study was that an executive that would say, I'm out and someone asked me to give to an organization and we're out of budget and doesn't fit, what do I say? Well, it's much easier to say no when you have a strong yes. So these executives are now able to say, thank you for asking. That is a fabulous cause. Our program at our company is employee driven. We have a social impact culture. We have a whole process around around celebrating the causes that are most important to our employees in the ways that they like to do good. So thank you, but that is not something that our social impact culture and our program is doing because it's employee driven. things like that. Those are not exactly the right words, but you get the idea. And then companies are also establishing just a very simple program charter. They're formalizing the governance structure and the decision-making process, but they're keeping the entrepreneurial spirit of the program that has made the program successful. Because one of the resounding pieces of feedback that came from the research was, we really like being able to do what we want. We want to give to the causes we want to give to, and businesses should. But has been very useful for businesses to have a charter that just says, here's our vision for the program, here is the way we're measuring success, here's how it ties to business performance, and here's how it builds the culture of engagement that we want for our associates and our employees, so that we can empower them to be the talent, to use their talents to be better professionals and drive our bottom line. Okay, so we've got social impact culture benchmark, we've got compelling message platform, we've got community engagement program structure. So those are the most recent elements of the research that have come through from the social impact benchmark studies. That's the latest and greatest, so that now you all are completely up to date. And we do have 14 minutes for Q&A of our panel, or anyone's comments or questions on any of these topics. Yes?
I wanted to know if one of the panel folks could tell me what they use for the benchmarks to measure success of the program they've done.
I have to admit, we don't do a very good job with that. I mean, we've got a lot of programs. I'm making probably as many notes as you guys are. And I've talked with Mindy about that. Mindy and Emily are in our marketing department here about kind of bringing it all together so that we can be a little bit better at communicating it with everyone. And I think we can do a much better job of leveraging the benefit with our associates. And but I think in terms of just a takeaway here for me is the team building and the engagement is huge, because you hear about all of that in terms of organizational health and how many people are actively disengaged with your organization. It's just it's a scary statistic, and this is a really great way to engage people. It's better than doing a ropes course, which is kind of a,
It is. People like it better.
It's kind of a phony deal,
It is a
where you
phony
go
deal.
somewhere, and this is something where you can really actually use the human capital that you have here to do good, and also to bring people together too. I mean, I think one of the greater things, it's interesting, and you look at all the happiness studies that they do, gratitude is certainly at the top of every list, but for whatever reason, we have a hard time with that. And I think when you go out and work in the community with people that are less fortunate than yourself, you can't help but be grateful for what you've got. So I really gave you a bad answer. We can't really, it's hard to measure that. But I think, in terms of just employee retention and engagement, that's huge.
And you're not alone. I mean, that is how most people feel. I mean, this is new stuff. I talked earlier about how the community impact benchmark was kind of the way people were looking at this and sustainability. But then it's like all of a sudden, with that jump from 56% to 86% of employees wanting this, everybody woke up like, oh, we better do something about this. So this is very, very new. And that's the reason for this group is 10 companies, including many of your companies, said we need some peer-to-peer learning on this, because we can't find anything out there on this, but we know it's there. So it's new. So up until like recently, there would be no reason to even think about this, but it's just emerged as this really, really critical need. So, other questions?
So if you've started this program recently in your company, obviously you've been doing this for a long time, how do you start? How do you begin to engage the employees in something like this if you just don't have it?
You want to talk a little bit about gathering opinions?
I think really probably the very basic first place to start is, what are you doing right now? Because I think companies, our research and the companies we work with, once they kind of say, oh, we don't have a program, but then they start looking at it and they do have a program. But you might have a group of folks over here who are coworkers who say, you know what, let's all get together and go cook a dinner at Ronald McDonald House one night. And so they've got something over here, and you are sending some checks out to some different companies that you support, perhaps your senior leadership. So I think the first thing is an inventory, really. What are you doing right now? What are we doing as a company? And that's the first part of it. And then it's a review of that to say what works for us, what makes sense for us. You know, I think sometimes there are companies who, you know, let's take a company that has a product that they produce, you know, whether it's a food product or they have a service, you know, they have a restaurant or they sell donuts or whatever it is. Those are the companies that really get a lot of requests for donations, right? And so sometimes it's a matter of taking that information and saying, we get hundreds of requests, but when we look at what our inventory is of what our staff is doing, these are the 3 things that are really important. So we're going to meet the requests that we can, and it gets back to being able to have a strong yes and the strong no, to say we're going to support schools, we're going to support hospitals, and we're going to support senior living facilities or whatever it is. So I think the first thing is figure out what you've got right now, because I think every company would be hard pressed to say they don't have anything at all. It's just getting it organized.
I think that's exactly right.
I have a thought on that one as well. I know a lot of every organization at some point goes through a strategic planning process, probably every so often, and they try to articulate what their vision, mission, values, those kind of things are. You can start there, because I think one of the challenges that you have as a leader is communicating and really getting the purpose or the values or the vision of your business kind of. So what I would suggest is take a look at that and say, okay, this is the vision for our business. Like I said, the purpose of our organization is to serve others for the greater glory of God. And our first value, we've got 3 values, but the first one is God, family, and community come first. So the example that I gave where we went and spent a weekend working there, I gave the example of my daughter. I mean, my kids were there. There were a lot of the other people from here, so it was a family type thing too. So if family is part of that, you want to integrate that too. So when you do that and align it with your values, it drives those values home, because it's not just a loose-eyed plaque on everybody's desk. It's something that's alive, you know. So that would be maybe where you might start as well.
Yeah, that's a great
Align
suggestion.
yourself with somebody that's aligned with your values.
Yeah,
So.
that's a very good suggestion, because it is part of a strategic plan, really.
Another
Yes.
point on that is, you know, when you're trying to build something, you know, we run an organization that's comprised of, you know, massively overwhelming percentage of salespeople, and we always talk to them and say, hey, look, you know, all you have to do is listen from yourself, right? And it goes the same for establishing something like this, right? What do your people want to do? It's very easy to go from the top down and say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and everybody needs to get on board because it's going to be great because I just said so, because I have the bully pulpit, right? But the opposite direction, I think, is much better, because you can simply say, you know, what do you guys want to do? Listen to them, aggregate that information, and say, here's what you guys said. There's automatic buy-in, right? And it actually resonates with them, so it makes it much more powerful, and people will be much more on board, I think. So, you know, we established a social committee that does this stuff, and, you know, do surveys with the employees right now. Like, here's 10 options, guys. Which one resonates with you the most? Pick those. We'll come back, we'll talk about it, and then we'll let you guys know what you chose that we should focus on this quarter for our philanthropic efforts, right? And then if you do it on a quarterly basis, it doesn't have to be one thing the whole year, right? Quarterly basis, this is what we're doing this quarter, and then you can switch it up, because then everybody gets a voice in the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. So I encourage you to do that, but put a committee together, right? And the people who are, you know, that will really drive it and be thoughtful in it, and can kind of build coalitions, get people together, and then get them to ask people what they want to do. So that's what we did, and I think that helped us out quite a bit.
What's becoming less and less popular is what we call the corporate cram down. It does not work. So it doesn't work anymore for a company to say, here's what we're giving, here's what we're doing. What does work is exactly what Jeffrey said, which is let's be very clear about our program and what the company's doing and what part is how we celebrate employees. Because nothing is worse than a disingenuous, fake employee benefit. We all know that. That is the worst. And so a lot of these matching gifts programs that are out there, there's 7% participation nationally in the matching gifts programs. Why is that? When you interview people, they're like, yeah, that matching gifts program that's at my employer, they're telling me, they're like, oh, we have a matching gifts program. And then they make me fill out 85 forms to get it. And then they tell me I can't give to my church, I can't give to my school, I can't give to that. Oh, by the way, I got to give to these 3 things. That is not an employee benefit. That is a corporate cram down. They're trying to get in my pocket to give to causes that they picked. It's just the lack of transparency there. Nobody's intending to do that. It's just entrenched because that's the way it's always been done. Instead, smart companies are saying, we're gonna tell you exactly what our program is. Back to the structure, right? To say, it's part of our vision. It's part of our company. Here's our charter. Here's what we believe in, to Sean's point, and here's what the company needs to give to. We got a little budget for the company because we gotta have STEM education. We gotta have sustainability. We gotta have diversity for our company to be successful. We have to allocate dollars to support those things in our communities, to make our community stronger, to make our business stronger. That's what the company needs to do. Now, first and foremost though, we want to celebrate what our associates love. And therefore, the rest of our program is all about you. And if you want to, and maybe they have a matching gifts program, maybe they don't, but they're very clear that it's great. The company must support things that support the company, and the employee benefit goes around the employee side. Really, really important, and that's been something that's just popped up recently. Okay, one last question, and a couple, Sharon and Mindy. 2 questions.
Just quickly, what do you see the role of HR typically?
Critical. The role of HR is absolutely critical. Unfortunately, most human resources professionals, Jackie was human resources at Applebee's, Cerner, NetSale, Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. You might share what
It's critical. I mean, it is critical, especially as the workforce, gets younger.
Yes.
As I don't know if maybe as I get older, workforce gets younger, but as you bring these younger kids in, that is important to them, and they do want to know what you're going to be able to do as a company, and their vision of work is very much more balanced than it was 20 years ago. Life balance. They want to be able. They work to support their great life that they're going to have, and in a different way, the experiences that they have. So it is really important to make sure that you give them the opportunity, and as HR, that you celebrate the things that they are doing. Again, not by saying, oh, look, our company's going to do this and this, but really by giving them the, sometimes even just the opportunity to talk about the things that they're doing personally, so that they can help
to share
and to be able to share that information. But it's critical.
And total lack of training. HR people just don't have no one's been trained in this, so there's a huge gap. Sharon, you had a question.
One of the things that we've tried to do over many years is to recognizing first of all that we have people in our firm who have been in the workforce for 30 or 40 years, so those have been around a long time. And those who have been, they're 1 to 5 years out of college and such, and they're very different. And so at our holiday party, usually we try, you can nominate prior to the holiday party, but there will be an award for a very active emerging leader and a very active experienced leader, so that you can recognize at various levels and for the community work that somebody has done, and then like the firm will contribute $1,000 to that person's charity of choice, so that they get to put in their opinion for where the money goes. So I think recognition has become something that is much more important now, I think, than probably what it was years ago when I came out of school. And so we've tried to find ways to, we call it quarterly celebrations and things like that, but we try to find ways to celebrate those successes of people.
Celebrate. That is absolutely the spirit. Celebrate the good you're already doing. Thank you to the Miller Group. Thank you, Jennifer and Balance Innovations, for the videotaping. And Sharon, you won the cake. You are so good.